This is the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast from Pork Congress up in Lima. I'm Ty Higgins. Nick Seger is the president of Ohio Pork Council. Good to see you again this year.
Good to see you, Ty.
Another great event, 2 full days jam-packed with information for pork producers all across the state. What are some of the highlights of this year's Pork Congress?
Well, as always, we have a great lineup of speakers. Had quite a few speakers yesterday. Have some National Pork Board staff speaking now. We have a great trade show here for everybody to see, and had a successful pack auction last night.
If you look at the industry in Ohio as a whole right now, of course, being president, you've got a bird's eye view of the pork industry across the Buckeye State. Give us the state of the industry right now compared to where we were a year ago.
Well, the state of the industry right now for pork production, it's pretty tough financially or economically. Hopefully we can increase demand and move past this down cycle in the markets. You know, with all the disease that's been the PRRS, the PED that's been battling the Ohio producers. It's been a struggle, but farmers, eternal optimists, we're always pushing forward and looking for tomorrow and a brighter tomorrow.
One of the things Ohio Pork does so well, they find those markets for that demand. How do you work as an organization on making sure that we get as much pork out there to the general public as possible?
Sometimes we do it basically not as a direct idea of we're trying to increase demand. Right now, obviously, we're trying to increase demand, but just being active in our community we spent some time in Toledo and the Toledo night market, met with all those people, and not only we were promoting our industry and showing the public what we do, we're also promoting pork. And so there again, increasing demand domestically, locally, and working for the industry multi directions all at the same time. And just any different type of avenue we can pursue, we're trying to think outside the box to promote the industry.
The industry getting more efficient. The quality of the pork is much higher than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. A lot of that has to do with technology that we're seeing in this industry. What are you seeing maybe on your farm that you didn't think you would use 10 years ago? And what we have a trade show floor here that's jam-packed of great information. What are you seeing from vendors that you may be utilizing in the future that we're seeing as far as technology advances in the pork industry?
Never quite thought I'd be considering putting water filtration. There's always been water filtration, but the different technology of using some UV light type technology, that sort of thing, that was something you really wouldn't think about. Never really thought you'd be talking about solar on hog barns to help sustain it on its own. Slightly older technology now, it's hard for me to say that, but ear tags, individual ear tags in sows that they're feeding or their diet is tailored individually to them is really hard to believe now here in 2024 that's commonplace or going more towards commonplace.
Amazing what's happening in this industry, and it's all on display in full view right here in Lima at Pork Congress. The president of the Ohio Pork Council, Nick Seger, our guest here. Thank you so much for being with us, and I'll see you next year.
Thanks, Ty.
Who feeds your need for new ideas for your family's best farm future? Ohio Farm Bureau. We work with our members to shape ag policy that will positively impact our industry. Farm Bureau is advancing business solutions to give you a competitive advantage. We help you gather information to stay ahead of important topics and technologies. Plus, Ohio Farm Bureau creates opportunities for growth. Ohio Farm Bureau, feeding your need for new ideas.
Find out how Nationwide Agribusiness can help you grow your business. Get to know the people with the experience and knowledge to help you. Whether you are looking to protect your farm or ranch from the ground up, or need someone who understands your changing commercial ag needs. Find out how to better manage the risks of your ag business, or how quickly you can get back to business. Learn how you can protect your next with Nationwide on your side.
Welcome back to the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. I'm Ty Higgins, joined by Hannah Thompson-Weeman. She is president and CEO of the Animal Agriculture Alliance, based out of Washington, D.C. She's here at Pork Congress this year, talking with pork producers about some of the things she works on every single day with the Animal Agriculture Alliance. Hannah, before we get into what you do on the consumer side, on the producer side, just give us a 30,000-foot view of what your organization's all about.
The Animal Agriculture Alliance is a nonprofit, and our mission is to safeguard the future of animal agriculture and its value to society by bridging the communication gap between farm and food communities. So we're here to set the record straight, correct the narrative, and communicate accurate science-based information about key issues like animal welfare, sustainability, and responsible antibiotic use, while also keeping an eye on the detractor groups who are spreading myths and misinformation about those topics.
We'll talk about those detractors in a bit. You know, at Farm Bureau and at the Ohio Pork Council, we do work very hard to reach out to the general public with the positive message of animal agriculture and agriculture as a whole, but it's not our complete focus. Of course, we have our members that we need to work on policy for, legislation in Columbus and D.C. That's where what Hannah and her team does comes in very, very handy. When it comes to your consumer outreach, what does that look like?
Well, consumer engagement for us is really influencer engagement. We're a small team. We have 5 full-time staff members, so we're always trying to maximize our time and our resource, which I know farmers can relate to as well. So for us, we're trying to influence the influencers. We're not necessarily going after the end consumer with these messages, but instead we're finding people, organizations, and companies who are very influential in what the end consumer hears and thinks about food and farming, and we make sure they have accurate, balanced information. So for us, that's restaurant, retail, and food service brands, as they're getting asked a lot to make policies about animal welfare, sustainability, antibiotic use, and we want to make sure those are coming from an informed place. The media, as they're covering issues related to animal agriculture, and dietitians. They're getting a lot of questions. Not only is this good for me, but how is it raised? Is it good for the planet? Is it good for the animals? So we're trying to find those key audiences who in turn have a large following themselves and make sure that they know the true story of animal agriculture.
No matter how big the following or how much work they do, boy, is it an uphill battle when it comes to fighting what comes out of the extremist groups against animal agriculture. How big is that business?
We do a lot of monitoring of animal rights and environmental extremist organizations who just don't believe there's any role for animal agriculture in the food system, on our planet. And we have group profiles on more than 200 different organizations that are working in that space. That's ones that are dedicated to quote unquote animal welfare, even though again, it's more of an animal rights agenda, talking about environmental issues, focused on antibiotics, focused on consumers. So there's a lot of different groups out there that we're tracking, and there's new ones popping up all the time. They're also very well funded. So just the most 40 or so most active of those groups on their public 990 filings, they're bringing in more than $800 millions of dollars in income annually. So there's a lot of funding, there's a lot of strategy that goes into this.
You talked with producers this morning about all the tactics that these activists are using, and we all know that they plant people on farms to get some footage they might be able to use down the line. We all have seen them stop trucks right before the processing plant. We have seen many of these different tactics. One I didn't know about that you mentioned this morning is the right to rescue tactic. I had no idea this was happening, but it's happening across the country. Fairly new, this tactic?
In recent years, particularly one of the most extreme organizations that we follow has really made their focus on what they believe is the legal right to rescue and achieving that through an animal bill of rights that they're advocating for. So this group has been known for conducting what they call open rescue, which is when they will go into a farm or a plant and they will take animals. So sometimes they'll go from farm to farm until they gain access. Sometimes they'll do multiple investigations before they go back and take the animals. Obviously, that's a huge biosecurity problem to have people without permission and without following the proper protocols going into farms, especially multiple farms at the same time. But they will go in and film what they claim to be the dire conditions on farms, and then it becomes a necessity for them to take animals out of those conditions. Now, some of these examples of things that they filmed, in one of the first of these stealth visits they conducted, it was a turkey farm, and they filmed the hospital pen. And obviously the birds in there were sick or injured, getting specialized care. They said, oh, this whole barn of birds looks like this. They have also gone into a broiler house. And if you've ever been in a chicken house, when you open the door, birds flock together. So they might all flock to the other end of the barn, even though they have plenty of space. And they'll say, oh, these birds are packed in here, ignoring the fact that they all chose to go to the other side of the barn. So it's about taking things out of context. One of my personal favorite examples, again, they were in a chicken house and they were literally standing in front of the feed and water lines saying the chickens didn't have any feed or water. So again, how much of this is intentional, how much of this is them not really knowing about agriculture remains to be seen. But the point is that they claim it is a necessity and an emergency in these situations that they need to rescue these animals. So it doesn't matter that they don't have permission to be there. It doesn't matter that this is theft. It's a rescue for them. So this really started happening around 2015, 2016, 2018, and they're just now starting to face legal consequences for this and going to trial in the past 2 years. And even though they don't argue the facts, they went in, they did it, they filmed themselves doing it, they posted it on the internet. They make this emotional argument to the jury that it's like a dog in a hot car, that in, I believe it's 17 states, there's laws on the books that if you see a dog in a car with the windows rolled up, you can break the window, get the dog out, and the owner can't come after you for unlawful accessing their vehicle because it was an emergency. So they're claiming it's like that, that they would see animals on farms. It's like a dog suffering in a hot car and they have to go in and quote unquote rescue them.
Wow. We talk a lot about this being on farm, but many of these tactics are done off the farm, maybe in the retail or restaurant space, even in Washington inside the Beltway.
And even the tactics that do happen on the farm and in the plant typically tie up to those broader campaigns, whether it's legislation that they're pushing for or trying to get our restaurant, retail, food service brand customers to adopt a certain policy under the guise of animal welfare, when really it's about raising costs, reducing efficiencies, so that consumers have to make tough choices about how much protein, animal protein, they can ultimately afford to purchase. So we do see a lot of these security incidents all tied up to whatever's going on at a bigger level. So right now, the biggest hot topics that we're seeing, both legislatively and in the restaurant retail space, obviously we talked this morning at Pork Congress about sow housing. So Prop 12 being upheld last year and now being fully implemented has led to another wave of state legislation that's very similar, and then also added pressure to restaurant, retail, food service customers who've made pledges in the past to phase out gestation stalls, really holding their feet to the fire, that they're going to uphold those commitments that they made. Similarly, cage-free eggs, a lot of companies made pledges to go cage-free, and now those pledges are coming due. There's been a lot of economic changes. There's been a lot of, AI issues since then, not to mention a global human pandemic that changed things and caused supply chain difficulties. But they're not going to let those brands forget that commitment that they made. And then also right now, not really legislatively yet, but on the restaurant retail side, a lot of pressure in the broiler welfare space. So saying that broiler chickens grow too fast, we need to shift to slower growing genetics of chickens, which doesn't really have any tangible animal welfare benefits, but it does have a lot of sustainability trade-offs to have animals on the farm longer, more feed, more waste. It's going to be a shortage of the prime meat that consumers want. But again, that's the end game here really for these groups that are pushing for it.
Hannah was the first presenter, 8 o'clock in the morning, and as she was talking about these tactics and things that are happening on farms across the country, these pork producers did not need coffee this morning to wake them up. She was opening a lot of eyes. So
they might need something stronger than coffee,
for
actually.
Sure. But they also wanted to know what they can do on their farm to prevent these types of things from happening.
And that's honestly the most important part of any presentation that we give is, we want to tell you what's going on, but it's not to scare you. It's to let you know what you can do to safeguard your livelihood and the reputation of animal agriculture. So really the most important thing that any of us can do, either as producers or help the producers that we work with, is to be beyond reproach. So we need to make sure we don't have any vulnerabilities on the animal welfare or sustainability front that could be exploited by someone who doesn't have the best interest of animal agriculture at heart. So we got to be crossing our T's, dotting our I's on animal welfare, on the environmental impact, things like that, so that we have a really strong position to stand on if we're called into question, and that there aren't things we have to feel like we are defending or responding to if they aren't really at their core the right thing to do. And then just making sure that's part of our culture, so that our animal welfare commitments are clearly stated and communicated. And sometimes people will say, well, that's just common sense. Why would I have animals if I wasn't going to take care of them? But in a world where so many people are so disconnected and there are so so many voices take advantage of that. There's no such thing as common sense, unfortunately. So making yourself a good representative of the animal agriculture community, but then you can also still be targeted, even if you are doing all those right things. So we do have to take security measures in mind to make our properties a harder target. So gates, fences, locks, and motion sensor lighting, no trespassing signage, a careful hiring process, a screening process for visitors, just all ways that we can be mindful of who's coming to our farm and when, and if they have the right intentions.
All of the major agricultural organizations are part of the Animal Agriculture Alliance, including American Farm Bureau, even on the board.
AFBF is actually one of our founding members.
So there you go.
From the beginning.
The reason I mention that is because with all that you're talking about with me here today, there are resources for farmers that you guys have. Tell us more about what those resources look like and how our members and farmers across the state and across the country can access them.
We have a lot of materials to help farmers and ranchers both have positive, proactive conversations, whether it's online or in your community, and then also take some of these defensive measures when it comes to farm and plant security and just understand the activist movement. We have over 400 member sponsors and donors from all across animal agriculture. So obviously groups like Farm Bureau, but also the producer organizations at the state and many, or at the national and many at the state level, and then companies as well. So we're at animalagalliance.org. It's our website. We're active all across social media platforms, so you can follow us publicly, and then certainly can get in touch with your state, national, Farm Bureau, or other organizations that are involved with us to get more direct access to those resources, or reach out to us anytime, even if you're not sure if you're affiliated with a member or not. We're here to help. We're here to help make sure producers can focus on your day-to-day and let us focus on these issues and help you navigate them.
On a little bit of a personal note, I've known Hannah for a while. Since her time, you'll notice the Buckeye red jacket at The Ohio State University. It's been fun to watch her career grow, and she has been such an asset to animal agriculture across the country, and really appreciate you taking time to be with us on the podcast today.
I thought you were going to mention I was your intern back in the day, so just...
She can boss me around now, so I'm not going to mention that one bit. We had early mornings at a radio studio on campus a long time ago, but since then she has done amazing things for agriculture, and appreciate everything you do.
Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity to be back in Ohio this week and continue to help the dedicated producer community here.
I'm Ty Higgins. We'll see you down the road.